Then we'll talk about the evolution of learning and development. We'll talk about our call to actions, future skills that are going to be necessary, also necessary today. And a big chunk of the session will be talking about strategies and best practices that you can take back and begin to execute today with your learning organizations, with your business units, with your families, or even just for yourself. And then, of course, we will have time for Q&A at the end. The learning objective for today is really to help you hopefully continue to build your future literacy skills around the future of work concepts and understanding those strategies and those best practices so that we can continue to evolve to meet the needs of our learners. A couple of, just one moment, slides are not, there we go. A couple of rules of the road for today. Please close out of everything on your laptop or iPad or whatever it is you're connected with so that you can truly focus for the next 75 minutes at this point, maybe 80 minutes. Switch off your mobiles, turn it on to airplane mode. There will be a 5-minute break in the middle of the session, so you will have time to check your email, step away, reset your brain, your mind, your eyes. We will have moderator support today in the chat, so in case you're having any issues, please let them know in the chat. And then lastly, participate. This is not a monologue. This isn't one of those sessions where you get to sit back and be a passive listener. I do ask you to be active, and there will be specific activities as we go through today, and I will be calling on certain people to speak up and share their thoughts. So be ready for that. All right, let's start with what is sometimes known as an existential question. Why are we here? And I'm not talking about in the bigger picture, why are we here, but why are we here today? Why are we talking about this topic? So I'm going to share a couple of what I call tidbits of information. So the first is, in case you aren't aware, we are in the middle or somewhere in that time frame of the fourth industrial revolution. Now, the fourth industrial revolution is all about the interconnectivity of us, whether it be cyber physical systems, the Internet of Things, networks. It's all about digital learner, learning enterprise, digital operations. Now, although we tend to create a bucket where we call them the industrial revolutions and we say there's 1, 2, 3, and 4, the reality is there's a lot of other activity that happens in between each one of those time frames. And so while we're only in the fourth industrial revolution, there's actually a lot of change that's constantly occurring for us. And our current situation with COVID is no different. And just a quick note, the session will not be about COVID today, but everything we talk about does apply because COVID is teaching us that we do need to be resilient, agile, and adaptable. And those are all skills that we need to perfect for the future of work. So I want to talk about the rate of change. And this is important for us to recognize. So again, when I was sharing that we're in the fourth industrial revolution, this kind of umbrella, within each of those, there are smaller increments of change. What's important to notate, and the question about why are we here today, one of the answers is that we are here because we are having an increased rate of change. What that means is that change is occurring at an exponential rate faster than ever, and it will continue to happen faster than ever. And so those periods between change is getting much, much smaller. So right now, although we're in the fourth industrial revolution, we're focusing on renewable energy, robotics, AI, 3D manufacturing. There's a lot of little increments of change that are going to impact us. And so that's one of the big reasons why hopefully you're here today is to learn about how to navigate those continuous, ambiguous waters of change. There are other forces that are shaping the way that we work in the future. So of course, technology, huge force, AI, robotics, automation, technology. I'll be talking about all of those today, but there are other factors that are impacting us. Demographic shifts. Demographic shifts, it's a huge reason that the future of work is changing. We've got the size and the distribution of our working population. We've got rapid urbanization happening with developing countries, individuals moving closer to cities or developing new cities. We have global economic power shifts. That's the power that's shifting between the developed and the developing countries. And then whether or not you believe in this, resource scarcity and climate change is impacting our future of work. So these are just some other forces that are impacting the way that we look at work for us. Now, the last reason why we're here to future prepare and future ready ourselves and our workforce. And I put this here for a reason. If somebody is trying to sell you this idea that they can teach you how to future-proof yourself, how to future-proof your team, go in the opposite direction, because we cannot future-proof anything. What we can do is future prepare and future ready. And that is the crux of our conversation today about what we should be focusing on, is helping to future prepare and future ready our workforce. The reality is this does not happen overnight. Change doesn't happen overnight. The future doesn't happen overnight. Neither does the future of work. It doesn't just magically happen. We get to create it. And that's all of us working together. We will create the future of work. So, long answer short, that is why we are here today. All right, before we start talking about the future, I want to take a step back as soon as my slides evolve. Thank you. I want to take a step back and talk about the past. And for some of us, it's going to be a long, long time ago. I want you to think back to what you wanted to be when you were a kid, when you were a child. When you were a child, what did you want to be when you grew up? So what I love about this question is that although most of us are strangers here, we have a lot of things in common. And one of those things is that we all wanted to be something. So I want to hear for a minute or two what you wanted to be when you grew up. So if you'll switch over to chat and share that for me. Some of the answers: a lawyer, a secretary because Mariah loved good clothes. I cannot argue with that one. Olympian, a doctor, a teacher, child psychiatrist, actress, meteorologist, interior design, Vanna White's job, a teacher, a fancy corporate job with a corner office. I love these. What I usually hear, and today is not really any different, is some people wanted to be a pilot, or maybe you wanted to be a dancer or a ballerina, or a chef or a cook. Maybe you wanted to be a doctor, a nurse, a dentist, or maybe you wanted to be, like me, a superhero. When I was a kid, I wanted to be Superman. Now, I didn't know what that meant. I just knew that I wanted to be able to put on the cape and fly and save the world. And it wasn't until a few years later that I realized that I couldn't be Superman. I didn't know what skills were required. I didn't know what I needed to do or if I even could do that. And I remember distinctly being about maybe 8 or 9 years old and almost feeling a little crushed and hopeless because I didn't know what else I could be at that point. That feeling is what our workforce is feeling today. When we think about the future of work, one of the biggest challenges that we have is that people don't know what they can be. They don't know what opportunities are going to be available to them in a future where we have automation, robotics, technology. And the reality is they're worried about this. And in fact, PwC has estimated that 40% of our workforce is worried about the future of their jobs as a result of automation, technology, and robotics. Disclaimer, this data is from last year. It's not about COVID. It's with a specific lens on technology, robotics, and automation. But we've got 40% of our workforce that are worried about this. That's a lot of people. And when we think about this, there's no wonder that they're worried, because when you go out to the internet and you do a quick search, this is the type of spurious headline information that you're going to see. Like these seeds of fear being planted. Will robots take our children's jobs? Or what happens when robots take our jobs? Or robots will destroy our jobs and we're not ready for it. And then there's data, and I use data in quotes for a reason. So the first data point is automation could kill 73 million US jobs by 2030. That's 9 years from now. Robots may steal as many as 800 million jobs in the next 13 years. So if you're following along, we just jumped from 73 to 800 million. Then my favorite proclamation: you will lose your job to a robot, and sooner than you think. It's no wonder that our workforce is worried. I would be worried too if I didn't understand the context behind this type of information. And then when you dig a little bit deeper, maybe you start researching actual firms and what are firms saying, like McKinsey & Company. McKinsey estimates that in the US, 30 million jobs may be at risk as a result of automation and robotics. 30 million. So then when you look at this from a global perspective, McKinsey is estimating that it could be as great as 400 million workers displaced globally. So as I'm researching this and getting all these data points, I see that they say, okay, US is 23%. Well, I'm not a mathematician, so I take out my phone, do a quick calculation, and 23% of 400 million is not 30 million like they predicted previously, it's actually 92 million. So what is it? Is it 30 million? Is it 92 million? So then I start to dig a little bit deeper. What I come up with is a bunch of different numbers. So PwC says it's actually 38 million. Organization for Economic Development says, don't worry, it's only 9 million. Forrester comes back and says, actually, it's 24 million people. But then Science Alert magazine says, no, it's only 3 million. And then Oxford University rounds off our data and says, all of you are wrong. It's actually 47 million people who may be at risk. Are you confused yet? Good. So let me ask you, what does this data tell us? So if you switch over to chat and share with me in a couple of sentences or maybe one sentence, what does this data tell us? And I'm actually going to call on a couple of people. I'm going to start with, how about Stephanie? What does this data tell us? Stephanie. How about Greta? Told you I'd be calling on you. Got to pay attention.
Tells us that the future it's unpredictable. We don't know what's going to happen.
100%. We have no idea. This data was from last year. No one was talking about COVID last year. No one was talking about the millions of people we'd have unemployed right now as a result of this. We simply have no idea how big of an impact the future will have in terms of technology, robotics, automations on our jobs. But what we do know is whether it's 3 million or whether it's 800 million, our workforce will be impacted, and they're hearing and seeing these same messages today. And this is our call to action, our first call to action of the conversation today, to start to be advocates to change this concept, to start preparing them for the future so that they can navigate these waters. So what does it tell us? We simply don't know. So if we don't know, then what can we do? What we can do is focus on what we do know. What we do know is that technology has been evolving for at least hundreds of years since the horse collar was invented in the 8th century in Middle Europe. Now, a little more recent, around the 19th century, we started to really upgrade this fear about technology and change. And once a generation, we have people in a near panic because technology is destroying jobs. Now, there is some truth to that. So if we look at the agricultural and the industrial revolution, those industries did absolutely decline, but yet the rest of the economy continued to grow. So if history is any indicator, our economy is going to continue to grow with technology. New technology spurs economic growth. We don't hear this side of the story. So let's take a look back at the early 20th century. Major mode of transportation, before our time of course, was horses and carriages. Enter the automobile industry. Absolutely decimates the horse and carriage industry, destroyed all of the jobs, but it created more jobs. And it changed jobs. It changed the streetcar to the bus driver. It created new types of jobs like gas station attendants and service technicians. And then it allowed employees to move further away from their work. So it could create new towns and new cities, and it created new industries like the travel and vacation industry. So new technology does destroy jobs, but it creates new jobs. So let's take a look at something a little bit more recent in our time, our lifetime, the invention of the personal computer. Mid to late 1980s really took off, destroyed about 3.5 million jobs, but it created over 19 million jobs. That's an initial surplus of 15 million, and this is growing every single day. New jobs that we couldn't have even fathomed existing 10 years ago. Like now, we could be a professional video game player. We could be a Kardashian, a social media influencer, or if you like cats, you can be a cat video analyzer on YouTube. These are all real jobs. Now, I don't know about you, but when I was a kid, none of these jobs were on that list of what I want to be when I grow up. And in fact, 5 minutes ago, when we talked about what we wanted to be, these weren't the jobs that we were listing because these jobs didn't exist when we were younger. The jobs that are going to exist 10 years from now may not exist today, so we just don't know what that's going to be like. So what can we do? We can focus on what we do know. So what's happening today is there are research firms like McKinsey & Company that are analyzing over 800 occupations, and within those occupations, they're analyzing over 2,000 work activities that are being done. And what they're doing is they're looking to identify the capability requirements of those activities to see which ones have a high probability for automation and robotics. This is extremely helpful information. So then what they have done is they've synthesized it down, and they've looked at the activities that we're doing, and they're looking at the demand that's going to shift as a result of automation and technology within those activities. So they've been able to identify there's a subset of activities where automation is going to help us. It's going to do the work for us, freeing us up to do what we know how to do best, which is focus on our human skills, our areas of expertise. However, what is extremely important for us to notate about this data is that there are a subset of activities where automation is going to replace us more than the time it's going to give us back. In other words, it means automation is better at some tasks than we are, and we should let it do those tasks. The three areas that have the highest potential for automation: collecting data, processing data, and predictable physical activities. These are the areas where automation is going to replace us. So we take that information, because we know this today, and we overlay the type of jobs that we have currently. And we can create two categories: those with the highest increase in future demand, like teachers, social workers, computer engineers, and those with the highest decrease in future demand: retail sales, laborers, financial clerks, vehicle operators. And then we map how many people are currently employed in those roles. And so in the roles that have the highest decrease in future demand, just at a first glance in these 5 roles, we have over 25 million people currently employed in those roles. So McKinsey may not be too far off with their estimation that 30 million people could be at risk. And it might sound like this is going to happen sometime in the future and we don't really need to worry about it today. Wrong. It's happening today, and we do need to be cognizant of it. So we've got tool and die makers that are being replaced by 3D printers. We've got customer service agents that are being replaced by IBM's Watson and chatbot. We've got forklift drivers that are being replaced by robots. You no longer have to go into a bank to deposit a check, which I absolutely love. I was showing my father how to do this recently. One of my favorite functions. In fact, if you think back 10 years ago, we would have thought there's no way this could ever be possible. It is possible, but as a result, we're seeing a decrease in the number of financial clerks that we need. And R2D2's cousin is replacing stock clerks across Walmarts throughout the world and other retail. So this change is happening right now, and these are just some examples of it. But I want to hear from you, what other type of jobs or job activities have you seen currently that's being impacted by technology, whether it be automation, robotics? Go ahead and share in the chat. And then again, I'm just going to call on a couple of people here. Stephanie, we'll try you again to see if your chat is working or your mute is unworking. Stephanie. All right, so Stephanie, if you're typing, I can hear you. But there's some really good examples in here. So living in Asia myself, I didn't think about this one, but restaurant and food preparers are being replaced by super apps. You can go into the store and you have the kiosk right there where you do all of your ordering. You don't have to engage with people. So that is a challenge. What else? Fast food restaurants, the first interviews, kiosks, airline check-in kiosks, absolutely. Hotel, you can check in electronically, warehouse distribution, exactly. So we're seeing that this is happening today, and we do need to be proactive about this. So again, focusing on what we do know. What we know is that jobs will be lost, absolutely. And it could be as great as 15%, as McKinsey was estimating. We look back at the horse and carriage industry, at the computer industry, we know that jobs were lost. But we also know from history and current activities that jobs will change, just like the streetcar changing to the buses, as technology and automation and robotics works beside us to free us up and complement us and augment us so that we can focus on other areas. But most importantly, and what we do not hear enough about, is that jobs will be gained. It could be as great as 33%, as some research firms are estimating, which significantly offsets the number of jobs that are lost. But we don't hear about this. We don't hear about the hopeful side of the future of automation, robotics, and technology. And the reason for that is that we live in an economy driven by fear. Fear sells. It's much more interesting to see a spurious headline like, we're going to lose 800 million jobs in the next 13 years to robots, than it is to see a headline that says, we may have a surplus of 15 million jobs that we can't fill because we don't have enough people. Unfortunately, fear sells in our economy. Clickbait works, and it's there for a reason. This is where our call to action steps in as learning and development professionals, or just as parents or humans in general. We need to change this conversation. We need to focus on planning and action like we're doing today, because that is what drives change and creates the future. Planning and action. I want to pivot for a minute and introduce you to a friend of mine, Mary. So Mary is in her mid-30s. She's a mother of two. She's a high school graduate, doesn't have a complete college degree. I think she finished about 2 years. She's been working in retail for about 4 or 5 years. She's content. She enjoys it. For me, Mary is a great team player. She is responsible. She's accountable. She's dependable. She's somebody that I would want on my team. But as we've talked about, Mary's job is at risk. Now, her job just didn't become at risk recently or in the past few years. Her job and the retail sales jobs in general have been at risk for a long time. So let me take you back a little bit in history. 1900s. The way that shopping existed was you took your piece of paper, you write your items on the paper, you go into your store, you hand them to a clerk. The clerk goes and finds all the items, boxes them up, and brings it back to you, which I think is absolutely efficient. I would love for them to bring that back. However, in the early 1920s, there was a chain by the name of the Piggly Wiggly, which some of you might be familiar with. I know it's down south, maybe a little north than Florida. Piggly Wiggly didn't want to do this anymore. They were looking for a way to save money. And so what they decided was, let's empower shoppers, especially women. That's kind of how they advertised this or build this, was giving women the power to go into a store and peruse the aisles and find them themselves. And as a result, this was the introduction of the cashier. And so this was a thinly veiled approach to cost savings. So this stayed for a long time until around the 80s, maybe late 80s, early 90s, till we introduced self-checkout lanes. Self-checkout lanes were introduced as a way for us, the consumer, to bypass the long lines and take control over our checkout experience so we could check out quicker. We all know this was a thinly or not so thinly veiled ploy at reducing costs, saving money because we're not having to pay for the humans, not having the human labor. Now, I love self-checkout lanes. I've used them all over the world. Rarely have they ever worked for me successfully. Either the person in front of me doesn't know how to use it properly, so we have to call over a human to fix it, or the scale doesn't work, or when I go to bag something, it tells me to take it out and put it back in. It doesn't ring up properly. I have to call somebody over to help me out. So there's still a human component to this. The reason I share this in such detail is because there is a difference between technology capability and technology adoption. So this is a huge distinction, because that's part of what's driving the fear, is that we've got a lot of technology capabilities, AI, robotics, we've got self-driving cars, but the adoption is a different story. And this is why the change for all these technology adoptions is going to be a slower burn. Just like with the self-checkout lanes, we have them available today. They don't work well enough to replace the humans, although some companies like Home Depot in California have created all self-checkout lanes with few humans. We have the Amazon Go store. Nonetheless, technology capability versus adoption does not equal the same. So this is why Mary and the other 6,000 retail workers are at risk, is because we have things like self-checkout lanes. So how can we help them? The answer is that business evolves, technology evolves, humans, we evolve. And that means that you and I and this industry needs to evolve. The learning and development, talent development space, HR space needs to evolve to meet the needs of our learners. Today, we're known as providing on-the-job learning. We're known as teaching knowledge, producing job content. Some of us Some call us the providers of learning. I've had people refer to our industry as the owners of learning. Now, I don't know about you. I don't want to be the owner of anybody's learning but my own. That's a lot of responsibility to put on our shoulders. So what if, instead of being the owners of learning or the providers of learning, we became known as learning enablers? And we do that by creating connected learners that empowers, encourages, and enables them to take control over their future with our help through being enablers. And we create connected learners by first identifying the skills that they have today. We identify the skills that they need for tomorrow. We architect developmental opportunities to bridge the gap between today and tomorrow. All the while, we help them build effective learning habits. Creating the connected learner is how we're going to be able to empower, enable, and encourage our learners to take control over their future and be prepared and be ready for the workforce of the future. So with that, we're going to stop here, take a 5-minute break. I'll turn the countdown on in a minute. That way you can kind of see it visually. Don't close the meeting, but I do encourage you, step away, get some water, reset your brain. When we come back, we're going to drill in heavily to that 3-prong approach of skills, developmental opportunities, and building effective learning habits. So let me start this real quick. And we will start now. So I will see you in 5 minutes as soon as it starts. Here we go. All right, 5-minute break. For those with the audio on, we are at the 1 minute mark. Time is up. As soon as I can get my slides working, there we go. Love that little countdown timer. Welcome back. Hopefully you were able to step away, catch up on your emails, reset your mind. I do want to share, someone did give me feedback about the speed of the session, and thank you for that feedback. I appreciate that. I did go a little bit faster for this first section, just so that we could get to the part where we can slow down and really drill into the strategies and the best practices and the activities that we're going to be working through. So I do apologize if it was a little fast, but this session is recorded, so you can go back and watch or listen to it again. Or if you can't sleep, you want to put yourself to sleep, watch the session, listen to the session. All right, welcome back. So there was a really great chat from Erin that I saw, and she said that we should be augmenting our activities and not living in fear of it so that we can be freed up to do things better. Absolutely. Automation, robotic technology is not something to be feared, it's something to be embraced. But again, the fear-driven headlines and the fear-based economy focuses on the fear. We need to focus on the hopeful side and the positive side. And that's what we're going to be talking about. But before we do, I want to do a quick knowledge check. So we're going to use your annotation tools. To access the annotation tools, you click View Options in the top middle of your screen. Then you click on Annotate, and you can click your check mark. So true or false, by understanding future literacy, we can help future-proof our talent. True or false? And if you can't find it, you can always just type it in the chat. So we're seeing a couple of false, a couple of true. I'm going to wait for a few more answers. By understanding future literacy, thank you, Erin, we can help future-proof our talent. All right, the answer is false, unequivocally false. We cannot future-proof anyone. This is a trick question, or a trick, true or false. We can future prepare and future ready. Lauren, move yours over more, towards false, other way. We can future prepare and future ready, but we cannot future-proof. So let me, Rosa, if you could go ahead and clear those annotations so we could move on, that would be very helpful. All right, so now we're going to drill down into those strategies and best practices in greater detail. And we're going to start with talking about AI. Here's the thing with AI compared to humans. AI excels in the linear and repetitive. Absolutely. Let it do that. We excel in the creative. AI is strong in problem identification. That's fine, because we're stronger in solving complex problems. AI provides information to us, but we find meaning in that information. And in the future, AI will lead the machine industries. But that's okay, because we're going to be leading the people. And as much as Hollywood and the media might like us to think that one day robots are going to replace humans, the reality is they can't. And they won't, because they're not ever going to become humans. And so we need to focus on our skills that separate artificial intelligence from our own, like the skills that allow us to connect with our learners, our customers, our patients, our employees through empathy and interpersonal skills, or the skills that allow us to solve complex problems beyond the linear where robots stop. Our creativity, our originality, our growth mindset. These are the skills of the future. These are our human skills. And that's what we need to be focusing on. And so when we talk about the concept of skills, I want to start with talking about how we can help our talent identify the skills they have today. So there's a couple of tools that we could use or best practices. The first is a skills barometer. What we should be doing today is having active conversations with our talent to identify and help them identify the skills that they have today. At the same time, we can also work with them to identify the skills that they're interested in developing further. What's great about this is we can turn this into a skills heat map, which then allows us to look at the skills they have, the skills they want to work on, and figure out where are our gaps within our organization or within our business unit so that we can begin to close those gaps today on the current skill set. So skills barometer and skills heat map, extremely important tools to be utilizing today. Question for you. And so what I'd like you to do is click participants, which should be down the bottom of your screen, and then click on the yes or no. And there's no wrong answer here. I just want to do a quick census check. Are you aware of the skill gaps that exist today within your business unit or organization? If I asked you, what are the skill gaps that you need to help close for your teams, for your business unit, for your organization, do you know what that is? I'm going to switch over because I want to see some of these answers. Where is participant? There we go. Okay, so I'm seeing some yeses, a couple of nos. So right now it looks to be about 50-50. If you do not know what those skill gaps are, you need to be proactive with that. This, of course, is your role. You need to be looking into that to be able to identify those today. That's our second call to action, is help identify what those skill gaps are that exist today within your organization. That is imperative. We have, Josh Burson has estimated that we have 86 million people in the US that have current skill gaps. It's on us. It's our responsibility to be aware of those skill gaps, to help research what those are, be working with our talent to find those. It's not someone else's responsibility. Don't leave it to the individuals because that's not their area of expertise. How are they going to know what skill gaps they're missing? That's our job as learning and development professionals as we begin to prepare and future ready our workforce. It's starting by helping them identify the skill gaps they have today. Now, my next question for you is, what other ways can we identify skill gaps? So besides talking with our talent, using a skills barometer, a skills heat map, what other ways can we do? This is the part where I want to learn from you to see what other ideas you have. Maybe it's something that you're doing currently within your organization, or maybe it's just an idea you've had or something that you've read about. What other ways can we identify skill gaps? And I'm going to call in a couple people. So I'm going to try again with Stephanie. Stephanie, are you back?
I am. I'm back.
Welcome.
Hi. So I think there's a lot of things that we can do. I like the idea of doing live interviews with people because I think you get more, right? I like surveys, but I like the sort of live survey format where you get a chance to get open and honest feedback and then ask additional questions to kind of build upon what you need to know. And I think that helps you identify skill gaps upon skill gaps when you're able to continue to drill down and question more.
That's a really good point. So not limiting it to just some type of tool that only takes you to the first level.
Yep.
It's having that discussion, that dialogue to drill down to level 3, 4, and 5.
Yeah, I think just an organic discussion is really an important part of this. It'll give you things that you wouldn't get from the written word. And
Aaron added to that saying it's about the empathy interviews, which it absolutely is from a design thinking perspective, those empathy interviews. Rather than me calling on anybody, if anybody would like to unmute and just share an idea that they have, or maybe something that you're using in your organization for how you're currently identifying skill gaps.
I'll go, I won't be shy. So we're actually using our HR consulting service. We use McLean. And so some of the things that we are going to do are some 360 assessments and organizationally do those, as well as some additional surveys targeted surveys focused on what staff feel are their gaps, as well as what the senior leaders and middle managers feel could be the gaps or areas we need to improve. I think we have a good pulse on it, but we still want to get their opinion so that when we do roll out something, it's not like, I think there'll be better buy-in as well.
That's great that you all are actively pursuing that. I'll share that there's a number of organizations that I consult with, and I don't know of any organization that really has their finger on the pulse right now in terms of what those skill gaps are. And I think Carol had a suggestion. Look at the open roles or the open positions that you have in the organization. This is like going back to basics. What a great fundamental way to figure out what current skill gaps you have by looking at your open roles. So we've got HR consulting firms. I shared in the chat, there are tools like LXPs are now building this in. So Degreed, EdCast, Skillsoft. We'll talk more about those a little bit later. They have skill barometers built in. So, and Erin was sharing too, talking and learning from other people outside of the L&D field, which is a great example. I'm going to come back to that in a little bit. So thank you all for sharing. Anybody else want to share before we move on?
Hey, Keith, this is Rebecca. Can you hear me? Hi.
Yeah.
I've used tools like Lominger in the past, which is using, a card deck with the management team about each employee and identifying where they see the person's strengths and weaknesses, and then also using the same deck with the actual employee and comparing what's required for those employees up against their job description, right? So then you can find your skill gaps based on those criteria that was built into their description. But that's one tool I've used with success.
Excellent. Can you put that into the chat if you haven't already?
Yeah, yep, I can do that. I did mention it, but I can mention it, yep, again.
Okay.
It's a great tool.
All right. So another tool or best practice I want to share with you is the concept of transferable skills. Now, if you're not familiar with the concept of transferable skills, the transferable skill is your core set of skill or abilities that can be applied to a wide range of different jobs in different industries, otherwise known, or I call them portable skills, meaning when you leave your job, these are the skills that come with you that make you a valuable resource. When we think about having a workforce that is worried about their future, what better way to empower them by helping them recognize what skills that they have that make them such a valuable employee, so that if they do have to move on or do decide to move on, those skills follow them and it makes them employable, it makes them a great team member. So the concept of transferable skills. Now, I'll share with you some examples of this, like with Mary. So we know that Mary's job is evolving from a retail sales cashier into probably self-checkout lane. When I talk with her and we talk about her future and her job, this is what she says: I'm just a cashier. I'm just a cashier. When it hurts me to even repeat that, because when people say I'm just, they're putting themselves into a box and they're already limiting their belief, they're limiting their future, they're limiting themselves. And we do that with job titles. Just a cashier. And my response back to her is, you're not just a cashier. To do your job, these are the type of skills you have to have. You have to have logical reasoning, because you're going to have probably irate customers coming through because the machine doesn't work or something happens, and you've got to figure out how to reason with them. She's got problem-solving skills, because the machines, if anybody's ever worked on them, they're not fun. There are always problems with them, so she's got to be able to troubleshoot those. She has communication skills, because she's got to educate the customers on how to use the machine to help get the lines moving faster. And then she has keen observation skills, because theft prevention is a huge issue with self-checkout lanes. And so she's got to be able to watch to make sure that people aren't stealing. These are all transferable skills that will follow her to a whole host of other jobs. But they are, the issue is our talent doesn't see that. And so it's our job to encourage them and to help them recognize what those transferable skills are. And I'll share with you, for me, I'm blessed enough that this concept, I became aware of it very early in my career. So I was transitioning, or I wanted to move from being a fast food worker, but I didn't know what other jobs existed. And so once upon a time, for those of you with a certain demographic, we had to actually read the newspapers to find jobs. And so I'm perusing the newspaper and I see this job for a Microsoft Office trainer. And I thought, that sounds interesting. I mean, how hard could it be to be a trainer? Well, I learned that it is quite difficult. So I looked at the skills that were required and I literally put them in a chart. Communication skills, people skills, Microsoft Office skills, and public speaking skills. And so luckily, I just had either the intuition or just something to be like, okay, well, these are the skills they need. What skills do I have that match that? And so I looked at communication skills and being cheeky, yeah, I can talk, I can read, I can write, so I have communication skills. People skills, well, I know people, so I must have people skills. Microsoft Office, at this point I was certified, I had taken the test, for the Microsoft Office certification thing, so I felt like I really knew Microsoft Office. Public speaking skills were not that great. But I thought, well, I can just learn on the job like other people do. So I went ahead and applied for the job, and I ended up getting it. Spoiler alert, I was horrible. At least for the first 2 or 3 months, I was probably the worst trainer that ever existed. My first class, I ended up walking out of it because I was so nervous. I broke down in tears. But I had tenacity. I didn't give up. I came back, and I didn't get fired. So eventually I got better and better, and hopefully today I'm a little bit better than when I started. But this concept didn't get lost on me. And so for me, my transferable skill is being a problem solver. That will follow me wherever I go. And once I recognized that about 10 years ago, it is so empowering because I don't live in fear about the future of my job. If I get let go, every company I know has problems. Every company I know needs problem solvers. So I know I'll be able to go out and get a job because I'm aware of my transferable skills. And so it happened a little bit later in my career when I wanted to move from being a trainer into change management. Had no idea what the industry was, didn't have experience, at least as the title of change management. But I went ahead and I looked and I researched it. Here are the skills that are required. Looking at, do I have those skill sets? How have I used those skill sets before? Once I figured it out, I applied for the role. I ended up getting it, and I was quite successful as being a change management specialist. So when we focus on job titles, we are eliminating, we're separating ourselves from a lot of people that could be qualified for those jobs. We need to be focusing on skills rather than job titles for our talent. So that's the concept of transferable skills. So I want to hear from you in the chat or go off mute and share, what are some examples of your own transferable skills? And this could be a new concept, so just take a moment and think about what, regardless of your job title, if you left today, what skills are you bringing and taking with you that are valuable for your next position?
Can you hear me okay?
So go ahead and share. Yes, yep.
Hi, this is Mariah Manuel Berry. So yeah, it's funny you asked that question. I was gonna grab it, but I didn't have enough time. There is a YouTube video by a speaker, and I'll look for it, but that is where I opened up my eyes to transferable skills by hearing her speak, because her concept was not thinking about finding your next job, but finding your passion, and the job will come. And I think for me, that's what transferable skills represent. In order for you to really be able to say, this is a skill that comes with me no matter where I am, I find it that is usually the thing that I'm passionate about most. So for me, it's customer service, the passion for helping people, seeing people grow and develop, going from not knowing something to, oh my goodness, you just taught me something new. That excitement that I get from that, helping people. I find myself better suited, even when I'm talking and communicating, when I get to talk versus typing or writing something. So to me, those are all skills that I think are very near and dear to me, but I think they also stem from who I truly am and what I'm passionate about. So you asked me today, it would be, communication, developing people, customer service, which is important, and then just having that people-to-people interaction, whether it be virtually or otherwise.
I love that. Yeah, the passion, the curiosity. That's a really great example, Mariah. Thank you for sharing that. Some other examples in the chat: customer service, as you talked about, communication, organization, critical thinking. Oh, that's such an important transferable skill set that I don't think enough people recognize. Erin, you're talking about your skills as a facilitator. Facilitation skills are boundless where they can be applied to. That's one of the things I encourage every young person, well, I guess any age, but really the younger generation, build your facilitation skills. If you can facilitate, it doesn't have to be a training facilitation, but it's such a small population that has the skill set to facilitate a meeting. And I think I would say that's probably one of my other skill sets that I think has been very valuable to me, is being able to facilitate a meeting, not just a training session. And we need more of that. These are all really great examples, so thank you for sharing those. Some other examples of transferable skills. We talked about problem-solving. Leadership. Teamwork is a transferable skill. I think it was Erin or somebody talked about feedback. This is such an important transferable skill, either asking for feedback or being able to give feedback in a meaningful manner. Both of those are important. And then innovative thinking, creative thinking, design thinking, UX, LX, these are all transferable skills. So I encourage you, explore your transferable skills. And Mariah, if you find that YouTube video, go ahead and put it into the chat. But explore your transferable skills. And then once you're comfortable with that concept, start to talk about this with your team. Share this. And it doesn't have to be just at work. It can be with your family, with your friends, your kids. It's important to help them figure out what their skill sets are so that we're not focused on job titles, we're focused on skills. Okay, so we've talked about identifying the skills that we have today through Skills Barometer. We talked about a bunch of other examples, and we talked about transferable skills. So we're good with the skills we have today. Now we need to figure out what skills are needed for tomorrow. So there's a couple of approaches I want to share with you. One is that we want to capture ongoing market data that helps us predict and prepare for these emerging skill needs. So that's a fancy way of basically saying, review the research, because the research that is out there is phenomenal. And I believe wholeheartedly it is our responsibility to be curators of this information. So not just at work, but if you have children, I think that this is something you want to be researching for your children as well, so you can help steer them in a path that's going to have strong future job possibilities. So my favorite places to go are the World Economic Forum, Forrester, Burson, and McKinsey Global Institute. All of this research is free. It's available today. It is so detailed that you could drill down into most likely your job category and find out what's the risk that your job category is in. I mean, the research is phenomenal. Again, we can't predict how many people are going to be out of jobs, but what we can predict is the trends that we're moving toward, where technology, robotics, and automation are going to augment those activities for us. So start researching this information. If you want to just start with one, I recommend the World Economic Forum. It's the most unbiased research because they're not selling anything. Their intention is truly altruistic to help the world be a better place. The next would be McKinsey Global Institute. They've got such a great wealth of information. So start with those two. Burson is also great. General Assembly has great information. So we want to start with looking at external data. It's outside of our organization, like conversations we're having today where we're sharing data. Start researching that information and get familiar with what the industry research says about emerging skill needs. So that's step one. Step two is internal to your organization. You want to be talking to your business and your customers and getting their feedback on what they see as future skill needs that will help them maintain a strategic perspective. Look at customers. You can even look at, and you should be looking at competitors. What are our competitors doing that might be different from us, that we might be able to learn from them? So have these conversations proactively today. And I'm going to take it one step further. What I recommend is that you consider starting a skills advisory board. It doesn't have to be anything complicated. The makeup of the advisory board could be you from an L&D talent perspective, your business partners, external subject matter experts. Maybe you've got consulting companies that you want to bring in and participate, and your customers. The intention is simple. You meet on a reoccurring basis. Maybe it's quarterly, maybe it's twice a year, and you are facilitating this conversation. You are proactively bringing them the external research. You're proactively bringing them your ideas, your internal research, and you're talking with them to find out what are they seeing? What is their 3 to 5 year strategy? What are the gaps that they currently have or that they see having in the near future? And how can you work together to begin to close those gaps? But the intention here really for me is that it's us, we're owning this, we're proactive, and we're doing this to be proactive rather than reactive. So we bring this information and we facilitate these conversations. So just a tool or a strategy that you can consider employing to help get in front of this conversation with your organization, with your customers. Another idea that you could consider, and I've used this with my teams, is creating future resumes. And I borrowed this from Ford, that's why Ford is on there. But the concept of a future resume is when we talk with our employees and we look at career planning, succession planning, we say, okay, 5 years out, what job do you want to have? It doesn't have to be at this organization, it doesn't have to be even in line with what you're doing right now, but having a discussion to help them figure out where are you 5 years, where are you 10 years, what's interesting to you, and then working backwards. You're helping them identify what type of accomplishments would you need to have, what type of experience would you need to have to get from point A to point B. And the power of this is it helps with succession planning to figure out where somebody's wanting to go so that you know long-term. It helps you with short-term individual development plans. And then it also helps you with helping them from a career planning process, long-term or short-term. So just a strategic or tactical tool that you could consider employing. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into breakout rooms because I want you to talk about what other ways can we identify future skill needs. So we're going to send you into a breakout room for 4 minutes. When you're in the breakout room, if you haven't already unmuted, unmute. Introduce yourself really quickly, maybe your name, where you're from. Share your individual idea, what you think is a way that we could identify future skill needs. Then as a group, you're going to identify what you think is the best or the strongest or whatever you want to share back to the team. And then you're going to pick a spokesperson. We'll pull you back after 4 minutes. And then what I'd like is the spokespersons to be sharing that one idea that they came up with, that your teams came up with for identifying future skill needs. So quick recap, 4 minutes. Unmute yourself, introduce yourself, share your idea, pick an idea as a team, identify a spokesperson. We will call you back. Do not click leave meeting. That will exit you out of Zoom. So you stay put, and we'll bring you right back. With that, Rosa is going to send you or us into breakout rooms. Here we go. can't tell. Is everybody back? No, I think they're still coming back.
At yourself and analyzing your skills and what new skills you may need.
Yep.
And how to access it.
Yep. Thanks, Joan.
Welcome back, everyone. It looks like everyone is back, so hopefully there was no real technical challenge there. I realized, though, we probably could use a couple more minutes. But
yeah, 4 minutes flew by, Keith.
It did.
I know. That's good, though. All right, so I'd like to hear from a couple of the spokespersons. So if you were a spokesperson, click on participants and then click yes, just so I know who to call on. It'll save a little bit of time. Why don't we start with Tracy?
Hi, everyone. So, one of the things we discussed was the generational gaps that can happen from generation to generation. I think we're seeing that a lot in the workplace right now in terms of what people expect from their employers and the types of companies they'd like to work for. So we thought that was an important thing to continue to look at as we move forward with our businesses.
Absolutely. The generational component is really critical. That's a really great example. Thank you for that. We have time for one more. Let me just do a quick search through here. Okay, so another green. How about Nicole?
Sure. So we talked about just looking at the different opportunities and maybe gaps in or goals within your immediate work group and the company as a larger whole. Like, for example, on your immediate work group, are there needs for leadership? Are there gaps in, maybe the kind of roles that are, or skills that are present? And so how can you work towards those? And then similarly, Rebecca mentioned at GM, they have goals that they're working toward in a big picture. And so how can you grow towards those goals and see what skills are going to take you and the team towards them? So just kind of find gaps and working to fill them.
Absolutely. Those are all really great examples. Thank you for sharing. I would love to hear from more, but I just realized that we only have 16 minutes left, so I need to continue on. So we've talked about identifying the skills for the future. Here's one of the challenges I'm seeing with this concept of upskilling for future skills. The employees are saying, whoa, I'm really busy. I'm just trying to do what I can do to get done today, especially with COVID. I'm living at work now. I've got my family. I don't have time to be thinking about what's going to happen in a few years. I'm just trying to survive today. And so that's something that we have to be empathetic on and very conscious of. And so in my experience, I came across this initiative that Citigroup was doing, and I wanted to just share this as an idea to consider, because we need to inspire our employees to be thinking about the future of work, to be thinking about these skill sets, these skill gaps, and how to close them so that they don't get left behind. And so there's a campaign that Citi started. It was called #BeMore. And the idea was to build off each other, to build off colleagues and learn from them, learn how they're taking L&D, how they're taking their training, and how it's benefiting them, so that it's not a top-down approach. So it's not your manager saying, hey, you need to go learn these skills, but rather it's motivational, because we're seeing how Mary has moved from this job to this job, and we're hearing directly from her. So it helps to demonstrate the value and motivate the learners. And so it's just a quick idea of a campaign. I recommend research the campaign. You can just Google #BeMore Citigroup. There's a lot of white papers out there on it. There's a couple of key aspects in it. So one idea they did was called employee idea jams. And it's really about brainstorming, same in design thinking, letting the employees figure out what type of ways do they want to learn, what type of initiatives do they want to have to help inspire, connect, and activate them. The other is personal growth messages. And this one I love. I was working with Con Ed recently. When I walked in to the Con Ed facility in New York, they had this huge, well, not recently, but I guess 8 months ago, they had this huge LCD display of how many courses were being taught that day. And I said, what if you move that down on the screen, at the top of the screen, you just had a quote from people who had taken the training and what they found valuable in it. And it's a way to help promote that personal growth idea and also continue to promote our training. So we've got personal growth messages. I've also seen, and Citi does this as well, daily self-improvement from an L&D future skills perspective. So they make a calendar, and for each day, there's just a little activity that can be done. Like today, go out and read this on the portal. Maybe it's about future skills. You know, on Tuesday, talk to a colleague and ask for feedback to see what type of skills that you could be developing on, things like that. So check out #BeMore. So we've talked about, again, finding skills today, skills needed for tomorrow. So now it's our turn to really architect those developmental opportunities. And so I want to share with you the most basic concept, which I still love. Sometimes it's about returning to basics, and that is stretch assignments. So a stretch assignment, if you're not familiar with it, is an activity, a job task, a project that pushes you outside of your comfort zone, but not so far out that you get burned out. The most important concept of a stretch assignment is that you do not judge your employees on it. It's not part of their merit system. It's not part of their yearly review cycle. It is a space for them to fail fast, forward quickly, dust themselves off, and continue learning and growing and developing. So again, most important thing is that you do not judge them on it. It's not part of their merit system. So I think some examples of stretch assignments. For Mary, a stretch assignment that I encourage her to do is look at maybe the next time you have a product launch in the store and figure out how you can be on that product launch team. Or maybe you start a campaign in the store. Maybe you're in charge of setting up store displays. Or what if you managed an intern or a volunteer, or you mentored a new hire? It's just something that pushes them outside of their comfort zone. For me, I'll share with you, these are stretch assignments, these ATD webinars. You know, every time I do one, I try and push myself a little bit further, maybe change up the approach or add more interactivity or just get out there and do something. I'll share with you, I saw this recently and I thought this really fits perfectly when we think about stretch assignments. At the end of the day, be brave enough to suck at something new. That's what stretch assignments are about. For me, if I'm not uncomfortable or I'm not nervous, then it's not a stretch assignment. So I'll give you another example. On my team, in fact, she's on the call today, Greta. So recently I gave Greta a stretch assignment, and that was go out and research learning ecosystems. Read 10 different journal entries. For each journal entry or article, write a paragraph summarizing it in your own words. Then at the end of that, develop a point of view based on what you've learned and figure out what's the message that you think someone else could learn based on what you've learned. So it introduced her to a new concept about learning the ecosystem. She loves writing. It's her personal activity. So we figured out a way how to bring writing into her actual work. And it's a win-win, and it's giving her a stretch assignment. I'm going to skip the next slide just for the sake of time, because I don't want to run out and keep people over 2 o'clock. I would love to hear about your current or past stretch assignments. Put them in the chat and I'll review them at the end of the session. I don't want to keep you too late. So in terms of creating opportunities to develop new skills, one thing that you could think about is where do we house this information? Like when my employees want to go or my team wants to go and figure out what to do, where do they go? You could create something like a development opportunity tool. It doesn't have to be anything specially about technology. It can be a SharePoint site, an intranet page, social media. But the idea is simple. It's a central location where you store these opportunities available to you. So Intel created a development opportunity tool. It's an internal platform that allows all employees to see access to what type of skill development opportunities exist. It doesn't have to be a full-time job that I'm going to, but maybe there's a need where somebody has 15% availability and they can go someplace else and develop new skills. Or maybe I have some bandwidth and I want to take my skill set and go into a different organization so I can learn about a new organization. The value of development opportunity tools is it creates two-way skill visibility for you and the employee. It offers best fit development because the employee can figure out what type of skills are required and what type of skills am I going to be developing. And then for the manager, the benefit is very clear. It gives us the opportunity to find access to talent that we may not have known otherwise existed in the organization. So that's a very valuable tool because often we're siloed with just the resources that we know about. But this type of tool can open up opportunities to help us figure out where all this talent exists, where all these skills exist within the organization. Now, what's important, okay, quickly, I'll talk about this. Forgot about this slide. So another tool that you can use are learning journey tools. Degreed, EdCast, Skillsoft, these are all LXPs, and what they have now integrated into the LXPs are learning journeys or career paths. So for example, in Percipio, which is Skillsoft, they have the ability for you to identify which job roles may be at risk. You do that based off of your research, and then you can create career paths in the system or learning paths on how you move from the role that you're in today to the role that may be more valuable in the future. Like from a data perspective, data analysts, that's a role that's at risk because automation technology does that better, analyzes better data than humans do. But data scientists are a job that's going to continue to be advocated for in the future. So how do I move from a data analyst to a data scientist? Well, that's what these types of learning journeys help create for our employees. So check those out if you're not familiar with LXPs. That's a new function that's really being rolled out this year. In fact, Degreed just launched a phenomenal new tool. I'm agnostic to those tools. That's why I'm sharing EdCast, Degreed, and Skillsoft. What's important, though, is that everything I've talked about so far has been about the skills being inside your organization. That's not always a luxury that we have. Oftentimes, we'll have skill needs when no one that we know of or no one in the organization has those types of skills. So our first thought is, let's go out and hire somebody new. I'm an advocate against that. When we hire someone new, in my opinion, we are robbing our current talent the opportunity to learn that skill set. Of course, there are outliers. There might be an emergency need, an urgent need today. I get that. But if we're doing our job and we're identifying the skills our talent has today, we're identifying the skill gaps of the future, we should be able to proactively plan for this and help our talent prepare. So a couple of ideas for external development opportunities. One of them is an example that Procter & Gamble did. And they took 10 digital marketing talent and they swapped companies for a month. It gave them the opportunity to learn a new organization, learn a new industry, and build up their skills based on that industry, and then bring that skill set back. This is a very powerful partnership between the two organizations with a lot of great success. Honestly, I haven't heard about this being done after that. So I think it's something that we could be continuing to explore. We could go to trade organizations, look at internships, giving our employees the opportunity. If this is a skill gap that we're missing and you don't have, let's see if there's a partner that we can have where you can go and work there for a little while to build up those skills. So there's opportunities that we have. The idea is simple. Whether it's a stretch assignment, whether it's a digital skills platform, or it's an external development opportunity, we want to be giving our talent the opportunity to be building the skills today while they're still working, not after they're made redundant, not after they're on the path to redundancy, and not after they're so worried about the future of their jobs that they're not even open to thinking. And so we want to give them the opportunity to second skill. And second skilling is developing these new skills while you're still working today. I'm going to skip this one again in the essence of time. Apologies for that. Okay. Some other skill development opportunities, mentorship, apprenticeship, highly overlooked. For me, apprenticeship is one of my favorite skill development opportunities. I think it's so much more valuable than a higher education. Somebody said, should I get a higher education degree or should I do an apprenticeship? I would advocate for an apprenticeship and then do certifications and augment that with the education. Talent rotation, job shadow, job swap. I've been encouraging Mary to do this. Shadow a manager in the organization. See if you could do a job swap with somebody, maybe for one day a week, just to figure out what it is they're doing and developing your skills that way. And then the other is tuition programs. Now there's tuition assistance and tuition reimbursement. I'm an advocate for tuition reimbursement. Tuition assistance is, it really helps derive the inequity in the L&D space because we're assuming that our talent can afford to carry that money. So in my opinion, we need to do away with tuition assistance and focus on tuition reimbursement programs so that everybody has equitable access to those tuition programs. All right, going into the home stretch here. Lastly, to round off our connected learners, we need to help them build effective learning habits. The concept of being a learner has shifted. No more is the concept that we just go to school and we learn something, a skill, a trade, and we get a job and we do it until we retire. That no longer exists. In order to be agile and adaptable, we've got to be learning, unlearning, relearning. Learning, unlearning, relearning, and this continues until we retire. This is the cycle of a lifelong learner. There's a famous quote that's attributed to Alvin Toffler. He did not say this. I know this because I've had to research it for school, but it is a paraphrase of what he said. However, I love the quote. The illiterate of the 21st century will not be those who cannot read and write, but those who cannot learn, unlearn, and relearn. Our modern careers are like a nonstop conveyor belt. We've got to keep moving and learning no matter what stage of the career that we're in. Being content is a mindset that puts us at risk. We want to be helping our talent recognize the importance of being lifelong learners so that they are agile, adaptable, and ready to fill the next organizational gap, whatever it is, because we don't know what it is, but being a lifelong learner will help them build that effective learning habit. Next, we have to include context for our learners. Context shapes learning. Put it this way, context is the relevancy. If you don't understand why you're taking the training, why you're in this program, then it's not going to be relevant to you. You're not going to retain it, and it's not going to help you drive performance improvement. We've got to be instilling context, and that's on us. That's not on the learners. We've got to help them build these effective learning habits by helping them with the context. And then we also have to help them with the art of reflection. We've got to be building in opportunities to reflect on what they're learning. And I did a bad job of that today with the timing. I apologize, but they need to have more opportunities for reflection. Learning and development is more about engagement and discussion than just a tick box exercise that says, I completed this and the LMS is now green. It's about engagement and discussion than just provision and consumption of content. So they've got to reflect on what they've learned to understand the relevance to be able to take it back and change their behavior. And I'm skipping this part real quick because I don't want to run out of time. The point is, we need to be curators versus creators instead of always creating content. Being curators allows us to take the content from our learners, from our resources, turn it into a usable format, put it in the place where they need it to, in that moment of need, in the format that they need, so that they can effectively analyze information. Because today our employees are having difficulty analyzing information because they're on information overload. We spend on average 10 hours a day, and this is by data research, 10 hours a day consuming media. So we've got to be helping them by curating information rather than just creating information. Okay, a couple minutes left. So when we started today, I asked you, what did you want to be when you grow up? And we heard lawyer, doctor, secretary, because the clothes are cool, which I agree with. What we didn't hear was, I wanted to be an L&D, I wanted to be a facilitator, I wanted to be an HR. And the reason for that is that we didn't know those jobs existed. We didn't know what type of skills would be required in those jobs. By creating connected learners, we're going to be able to help Mary and the 6 million other retail workers, or the 800 million people who may be at risk. We're going to help them be prepared for the future of work, because today they're not aware of the transferable skills that they have. They're not aware of the concept of what they can be. And that's where we need to come in to help create that connected learner, identifying the skills today and tomorrow, architecting those developmental opportunities, and helping them build effective learning habits so that they are prepared to navigate the waters of the future of work. Our call to action is to evolve from being the providers of learning to being learning enablers so that we can help our employees help themselves. Malcolm X once said, tomorrow belongs to those who prepare for it today. This is our today right now. You've committed to that by being in this session. This is our today to take these actions forward and to begin to change the conversation from being fear-based to being hopeful, to being proactive and action-oriented. We do that by changing the conversation of humans versus machines to humans and machines, the future blended workforce. Thank you for joining today. We're going to open it up for Q&A, but before we do that, while you're thinking about your questions, a couple quick things. Here's some QR codes. Add me on LinkedIn. I'm very active there. I would love to continue the conversation, continue the relationship in that space. I also have my podcast here ahead of tomorrow. I focus on topics to help us prepare for and stay ahead of tomorrow. So check those out. All right, we'll go ahead and open it up for a couple of questions.
Yes, and we do have a couple already that came through before. So Erin had inquired about the skills heat map. Her question was, it helps us better match talent with work so we can engage and retain talent. Is that the purpose of it?
That is one of the purposes. I think the other purpose is for succession planning, for future planning, for career planning. But yeah, that's absolutely one of the purposes. And for those of you who have to drop, feel free to email me and connect with me on LinkedIn to ask your questions if we weren't able to get through it today.
Keith, I think there was just one related to the foresight tools. Should we be incorporating those into our professional development plans? We do want to be respectful of everyone's time, but it seems like folks are still on here with us. So I think Erin, who asked that, is still on as well. I don't know if you wanted to get to that one.
The answer is yes. In the short answer.
And I think she actually just dropped off. But anyway,
okay,
for those who then listen to this recording, folks are dropping off. Keith, thank you so much. We did run over, but it was a good running over because of all the wonderful info. Folks, catch us online. Keith is online a lot, LinkedIn, very active. So is our chapter. Like, share, join us for other opportunities that we have to increase your learning. We hope to see you again for the other 2 parts of this 3-part learning series. Keith, you are awesome. Bless you and thank you.
And thank you, Rosa, and thank you, ATD, especially for opening this up and making it available to everybody at no cost. Thanks, everyone.
Take care, everyone, and have a wonderful rest of your day.
Take care, everyone.